Proverbs chapter 24. We'll pick up where we left off last week, so we're in verse 17. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. Well, that's a slap in the face early on a Sunday morning. When your enemy falls, don't be glad. When they stumble, don't revel in that. This is a tough one for me. Okay, I got a little bit of David in me, you know. Lord, curse them and their brother and their sister and their mother and let their name be blotted out. You know, that whole one psalm that's like that over and over and over. This happened to me a couple weeks ago. In traffic, of course. Nashville traffic. Count it all a blessing when you fall. This person cuts me off. I have to slam on the brakes, right, to not hit them, because they do not care about anything else other than how quickly can they get to where they want to be. And so I'm mad because I had to slam on the brakes. I had to push my foot down on that pedal on the floor. Ruined my day. And I watched them, because we're barely moving. I mean, this is a 10-mile-an-hour scenario, you know, start and stop, you know, real rush hour. And, you know, I learned a long time ago that the whole jump into each open spot, it doesn't actually help. You end up right beside the same people at the end. So I at least learned that. I gave up on that a long time ago. Now I just get into one lane, and where it goes, and I'm just there. And so I just get to watch the show, right? And so I'm watching this cat, you know, he cuts me off, and then he jumps in that lane, and he jumps in this lane. And you can just see brake lights behind him all over the place coming on because he's cutting everybody off. And I'm just getting madder and madder and madder. And so finally he's out of sight. Thank goodness, you know, because he's the problem, not me. So finally he's out of sight. And a good half hour later, after traffic opens up and we're out close to Antioch, he's pulled over on the side of the road, state trooper. What was my first reaction? Ha ha! And then, by coincidence, I had to start preparing for this lesson. Think God doesn't have a sense of humor? That's what he said to me. Aha! For one thing, it didn't do me any good that they got pulled over. You know what it did do? It made them madder. Now they're further behind, and now they're acting more stupid. Because less than 10 minutes down the road, they come flying by me again. Because now they're really late. So nothing good came out of that. Solomon says, just don't. Don't rejoice when your enemy falls. Do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles. I'm talking about traffic, but can we apply this to real stuff? And it gets hard. There are people who have actually done you real wrong in your life. And it's easy to say, yeah, I forgive them because I know I'm supposed to. Well, that's not the heart of forgiveness, for one thing. But how many times, and you don't have to raise your hands, I'll raise mine. This is me, has been in the past. I'm a lot better at it than I used to be, honestly. Because God won't let you stay where you are. But I have said I forgive them, and yet still, when something happens to them, I'm like, there you go. That's what you get. Now, the problem with that is, I don't want what I got coming to me. I just want them to have what they got coming to them. Solomon says don't do that. For one, just practically speaking, it doesn't help. All of that stuff that's boiling inside of you, that's just your problem. That's your poison that you're dealing with. You're not hurting them. And if they stumble, it doesn't help you. So just practically speaking, it doesn't do anybody much good. But then we get to the New Testament, Jesus raises the bar much higher. Not only, he says, don't count it a good thing when your enemy is hurt, but love them. See, that's a whole new ball game there. Go over to Matthew with me for a second. Matthew chapter 5. me find it because I think I wrote this down wrong. Yeah, Matthew 5:43. Jesus speaking, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For He makes His sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect." Jesus says, look guys, our bar is way up here. If you can accomplish enough self-control to not murder people that hurt you, you're doing just as well as the world is doing. Congratulations. But we're going to kick it up a notch. We're going to try to help them. See, these are action verbs that Jesus uses. Bless those who curse you. That's not just not hoping that they die. That's doing something to be a blessing to them. Have you seen the little bullying video that's going around on Facebook, some of you? I can't remember the guy that did this, but he's talking to a large gathering of youth, I assume it is. And they're talking about bullying, and he's talking about good responses to that. What do we do when we run across a bully? You know, talking about somebody that's verbally abusive, and kids deal with this in high school. You know, there's always the one person, and they just have to dominate, right? So they will say the ugly things to you, hoping to get a response from you because that's their win. And so he demonstrates how that normally goes. And he's got this young girl, and he tells her to be the bully. And so she's saying these awful things about him, that he's ugly and he's short and he's stupid and all that. And he's responding the way everybody else usually does. Oh, yeah, no, you're stupid. No, he's just repeating what the bully said, because that's what people do. And there was no end. There was no logical conclusion to that episode. So he stops it and he said, let's try it a different way. He said, do the same thing again, and I'm going to respond in a different way. And so the girl starts again. She says, you're ugly. He said, you're beautiful. Well, you're stupid. Yeah, sometimes I am. I do stupid things all the time. And I'm sorry if I bothered you. Or you're short. Your eyes are beautiful. You know, he just kept saying really nice things back. And I'm like, man, that really goes along with this. Because we get bullied all the time. Circumstances and people who actually are trying to get that reaction out of us. Some, they're not even thinking about us, and yet they stir up those reactions in us. How much better off would we be if we chose in those moments to do something for that person, to give them a compliment, to pray for them, not at them, but for them? See, I think that's what Solomon is alluding to here, and I think that's where Jesus takes us to if we're going to follow him. He got pushed around a lot. Because he was weak? No. Because he was a doormat? No. Because he loved people. And he wasn't going to allow anything stopping him from blessing people. Because that's what he wanted to do. So go out of your way to be a blessing to those who are against you, and you'll be acting like Jesus. Which is what a Christian, which means little Jesus, is supposed to do. Act like Jesus. But having said that, verse 18 is interesting. 17, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles. 18, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. See, that's interesting to me. Solomon's kind of like, hey, if they're being knocked down, don't distract God. Because he might stop and turn his attention to you. So that's a good little dig there. But part of the story is what James tells us. What does he say? Be slow to anger. Why? For the wrath of man doesn't produce the righteousness of God. So there's no point in our wrath against other people. It doesn't accomplish anything because it can't, because it shouldn't, because we are not a righteous judge. God is. So, know what does produce the righteousness of God? Or at least what can produce the righteousness of God? God if he's allowed to do his job. The wrath of God has a purpose. It's meant to drive people to him, to drive people to the end of themselves so that they know they need him. And sometimes when we get involved and try to fix the thing or try to help God along, we distract somebody from the process. And so maybe not even does something good not happen, maybe something bad happens. Maybe they're no better off for the wrath that they've encountered. Solomon says, if your enemy is deserving of wrath, don't worry, God's got this. Ain't nobody getting away with nothing, right? We say it all the time. And if you get in the way trying to apply your wrath at the same time God is working, you might distract him from that work and make him fix his eyes of discipline on you. Because now you're in the wrong. It's just not a good plan. Right? Verse 19. Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the wicked, for there will be no prospect for the evil man. The lamp of the wicked will be put out. Parents, take note of this. Speak truth into the lives of your kids constantly. Teach them what they need to know, and you may be changing the course of your family for generations to come. What in the world am I talking about? Well, Psalm 37, the words of David, Solomon's father. Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like grass and wither as the green herb. That's David. Solomon heard it, and now his son is hearing it, because that's what these Proverbs were written for his son, and so are we. That's why Solomon is so exclamatory. Is that a word? Exclamatory? It is now. He's so locked on to get wisdom. Hear. Pay attention. Listen. Find the people that understand and listen to what they say and mimic them and follow what they do. Take it in and pass it on. And things can change. A lot of you in this room are at the beginning of a new cycle for a family tree. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. Some of you are coming from backgrounds that don't vaguely resemble who you are now. But before now, you were just next in line. But the truth got a hold of you. And now you're different. And my exhortation is, pass that on. Pass that on. You may be changing the entire direction of an entire family. Amen. That's how it's supposed to work. Don't lose sight of that. Don't lose hope. Seek truth, get wisdom, and pass it on. It may feel like nothing's getting through. I'm a parent. I get that. I understand. Eddie, what's your testimony? Sitting on the back row, not hearing a word your dad said, right? And yet, how much of it do you know now? A lot of it. It was getting through. Even you thought you weren't listening. Parents, that's how it works. Somebody is going to teach your kids how to think and what to think and what to do. Like Dr. Sam always says, it's not really brainwashing. We just don't teach them anything else. It may feel like nothing's getting through. You feel helpless, hopeless, like you're wasting time. It can really get under your skin, but there's no way to know for sure what's actually happening, sometimes until decades later. The only way to be sure that nothing is getting through is to not send anything. Just let them grow up however they want. Let them learn whatever they're going to learn. No, that's not us. We're planters. We're seed planters. And sometimes that's all we get to do is plant the seed. Maybe we get to help water. Maybe we get to help fertilize, but there's no guarantee of that. The hope is that sometimes that seed grows. Sometimes crops grow in the desert. But nothing grows where nothing is planted. Parents, that is your job. Brothers and sisters, that is your job. Saved people, that is your job. Plant the seed. Verse 21. My son, fear the Lord and the king. Do not associate with those given to change, for their calamity will rise suddenly, and who knows the ruin those two can bring. Why does he say fear God and the king? All authority is given by God. The good guys and the bad guys. To accomplish his will. Sometimes his will is pressure, discomfort, discouragement even. Those are valid tools of God. And sometimes he does that through leadership. When you buck the thing that's giving you the pressure or the thing that's giving you the blessing in the alternate scenario, you're slowing down God's process. Maybe derailing it even. And to help you stay on track with that, don't hang out with those and be influenced by those who tend to be blown here, there, and yonder. That's what it's talking about, those that are unsettled, unstable. Those that are given to change is the phrase. They're all over the place. Why? Mostly because they're ruled by their emotions and their feelings. And those are constantly changing. So they are constantly here, there, and yonder. And some of them are very charismatic and powerful, and they're the alphas, and people follow them. Don't be one of the ones that follows them. Because Solomon says their calamity will rise suddenly. And that's not going to just affect them. If you're following them, that's going to affect you as well. Instead, find those who are steadfast and stable, grounded in the truth, and be influenced by them. Why? So you can avoid calamity. Works for me. Verse 23. These things also belong to the wise. It is not good to show partiality in judgment. He who says to the wicked, you are righteous, him the people will curse. Nations will abhor him. But those who rebuke the wicked will have delight, and a good blessing will come upon them. He who gives a right answer kisses the lips. What in the world kisses the lips? What kind of church is this? If you go back and find the context of this, actually back in the Psalms, David uses this phrase. It's really something that just shows an expression of true, honest respect. Okay, it's not flattery, saying something that may not even be true just to prop up somebody or get something from them or whatever. It's true respect. That's kisses the lips. And Solomon says, honesty kisses the lips. Even if you've got to say something difficult to somebody, just be honest. That's the way to show honor and respect, and that's what we're called to. As for the partiality issue, here's the thing. We live in a world that worships power and fame and wealth, irregardless of how those things were gained. Usually, it has very little to do with the person that has those things. We just like, as a culture, those things. And so we tend to prop up those people. Our culture tends to defer to or show partiality to the thoughts and the wishes of those people that have those things, sometimes without even considering the morality involved. That can't be us. Don't fall into that trap. Love what God loves. Hate what God hates. Smile over what makes him smile and weep over what makes him weep. Period. To say we belong to him and yet call evil good or good evil is hypocritical at the highest level. We have the Holy Spirit in us. We have a source of knowledge and discernment and wisdom. And to go the other way is sin. Right? Let's not do that. Amen? Settled. Verse 27. We're not doing that anymore. 27. Prepare your outside work. Make it fit for yourself in the field, and afterward build your house. I used to work with a guy. His name was Richard. Worked at this concrete plant. And Richard had the most beautiful car in the place. It was nicer than the guy that owned the company. Okay? And he lived in a house about the size of my office and in nowhere near as good a shape. Okay? The place was a train wreck. Right? It was awful. But he spent all of his money on this car. And one day I was like, Richard, what's your deal, man? Why do you go home to that house every night? You got this beautiful car. He said, well, I figure first things first. If I lose my house, I can live in my car. But if I lose my car, I can't drive my house to work. I was like, okay. What am I going to say to that? That's kind of what Solomon is talking about here. If you drive out through the countryside, if you're a farm type person, I grew up out in the country, so I saw this all the time. Real farmers, not the cool hobby farmers that we have now. Okay, that's a whole different thing. I'm talking about real farmers. They have a ton of land because they need it. They have big barns and big stables to hold their equipment and their animals. They have huge buildings that supply everything they need for the work of the farm, and the house is usually very small. Just functional. Why? First things first. Handle the business. If there's enough money for a bigger, nicer house later and you want that, fine. That's great. But that's not the thing. You got to take care of the business first. You got to eat your dinner before you can have dessert. Okay? That's the thing. Now, this is where we'll step on a few toes. Our culture is so heavily involved in the system of credit, which is you can have the stuff now and do the work to pay for it later. I remember when that snake jumped up and bit me for the first time. And it set in motion a ridiculous outpouring of stupidity. I wish I had never heard of revolving credit. I remember the very first purchase. And it was because I was in a bad mood. I'd had a motorcycle wreck and I was in a bad mood. We didn't get to go on vacation. You know what would make us feel better? Well, now we have to stay home. We can't go on vacation, so we need something so we can have a better time because now we have to stay at home. We need a VCR. Okay, this is a while ago. A long while ago. But we didn't just need a VCR. We needed the VCR. Right? Forehead, absolutely. Dolby, forehead, everything. Sounded great through our little junky TV. Listen. $600. Yeah. This is like 1989. I bought new DVD players for the church last week, $27 a piece. $27 a piece. This is a $600 VCR. Just fill out this simple little form, and you can have it today. And you can have the bill forever. I bet I paid $3,000 for that VCR. I bet I did. And I paid for it for years and years and years, along with all the other stuff I bought before I had the money to pay for it. That's our culture. As probably the prime example in this room of the one who's made that mistake, please listen to me. Don't do that. The borrower is slave to the lender. When you're working toward a goal, toward something, I'm working hard, I'm working a little extra, I'm trying to save some money so I can do this thing, man, that's kind of cool, that's exciting. But when you're like, man, I got to work extra this week because the bills are already piled up. Card. There ain't no blessing in that. I'm just telling you. Listen to the guy who's made this mistake a lot in the past. Business before play. Earn your money before you spend it. And you're going to be better off, I promise. 2 blessings from that. 1, if you don't finance everything, you'll pay less for everything. Which means you can actually have more stuff that way. I'm not saying I want you to have more stuff. But you can if you go that way. The other blessing, once you've actually made money, you worked hard and they handed it to you, and you have the money in your hand, it's hard to hand it to somebody else. It's harder than it is to swipe a card. Man, that's easy. Dave Ramsey talks about that a lot. They've done the studies about how much more money somebody is willing to spend for a specific thing if they're swiping a card as opposed to handing cash. Because it hurts to hand cash. Just be careful with that. Delayed gratification is sweeter anyway. It really is. And it's definitely more efficient and more of an actual blessing than what instant gratification promises that it will be, but it never delivers on. Why? Because it's never enough. If you get into the cycle of instant gratification, I need everything I can get now, it's never enough. You don't really enjoy what you get. Because it wasn't a goal that you went for, it was a thing you got. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it certainly makes sense to me. I guarantee you that. A great example of this in Scripture is the Jewish engagement ritual. I don't know if everybody understands this, but back then, the guy would go and he would ask for the lady's hand, and at that point they were engaged, but that's really married. Okay, it was that deep a commitment. They were considered joined together already, but that was the point where he would leave and go to wherever he was from and start getting his affairs in order. Getting the house built if he had to build it, or fixed if he had to fix it, and make sure he's got the job lined up so he's got money coming in so he can support the family he already has. All this time she's still living with her parents. And then there's that day when he's been working and working, and sometimes this took a year or two. Okay? But there was a specific goal that they're working towards. And when he finally gets everything in order and the house is ready to live in and the job is ready and secure and there's plenty of finances, then he goes and he gets his bride. And that is a beautiful picture of how we should approach everything, I think. And do the preparation beforehand, not afterward. It's just better all the way around. For those of you who may still be single now, here's one way this concept applies to you. Do the work now. Prepare yourself now to be the husband or the wife that you will need to be. Because our system doesn't work that way. Our system is like, hey, you want to get married? Yeah, we can do it tomorrow if we want. And then you're living together. Do the preparation first. If you're not ready when you get engaged, let the engagement be long enough for you to get ready. Be prepared. Get in the Bible. Find out what a godly husband or a godly wife looks like. Find out what God expects from you. What does God say about marriage? What is its purpose even? Now, spoiler alert, if you haven't studied this yet, marriage actually isn't about you. I'm sorry. I was going a different direction, but the purpose of marriage is to symbolically represent the relationship of Jesus Christ and His church. And if you don't know that, you're not ready to get married. And that's a problem, because if you're not ready to get married, then when it turns out to not be all puppies and rainbows, you're ready to go. But if you know what it's actually about, if you know how big the commitment really is, if you know what the pieces of the puzzle look like, then you will do everything in your power to make sure that puzzle doesn't get ripped apart, because it means something beyond you and that person. Be prepared. Business before pleasure. Verse 28. Lost my place. Thank you. Do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause. For would you deceive with your lips? Do not say, I will do to him just as he has done to me. I will render to the man according to his work. Now, a couple of things going on here. Would you deceive with your lips? Are you really willing to do that? See, I'm amazed sometimes in counseling or in men's or ladies groups, man, I see this kind of bubble to the surface. Well, I felt uncomfortable, but I had to tell a lie to, they don't say it that blatantly, but that's what's happening. To get to the end of the scenario, for it to be what it needed to be, I had to say this, and I know that wasn't true, but would you deceive with your lips? Child of God? Representative of Jesus Christ? Are you willing to say something that's not true against somebody else to get ahead, or to just not fall behind, or to get back at them for something that they did to you? Can you, in your mind, rationalize doing something evil to counteract something evil? See, that's a problem. It's a problem in the American church. I don't see it, thankfully, much around here, but the fact that we see it other places, and God felt it was necessary to have this written down for us to look at and read, be careful. There's a temptation there. And be careful if you think you stand, lest you fall. I hope that's not you. That's how the world does things. We shouldn't be any part of that. The world is all about the ends justify the means. And that cannot be for us. We are better losing righteously than winning immorally. Every time. But also, there's something else going on here. There's the problem of wanting to be the instrument of justice. And we've talked about this a lot before. We don't just want justice for the people that wrong us. We would really like to be the hammer. Right? There's a certain amount of gratification in that. The first example, witness without cause, implies a lie. But verse 29, it could be talking about somebody who has absolutely hurt you in some way. You're not lying. They did you wrong. But God says, vengeance is mine. Stay out of the way. You're going to gum up the works. You're going to derail this train. If you've been hurt, cry out to me, God says. And in my perfect wisdom, in my perfect timing, in my perfect way, I will deal with it how I see fit. And you're going to have to trust me on that. But the good news is we can trust Him on that. And if He shows mercy to somebody, don't forget that He showed mercy to us. That's okay. It's actually perfect. Because everything He does is right. Defeating an enemy may feel good, but you know what feels better? A clean slate with God. Clear conscience. Lay down at night without regrets. Wake up in the morning refreshed and ready to go, not having to deal with the junk of the temptation you fell to the day before, to do evil instead of good. Don't grow weary in doing good. Listen, Jesus understands more than anybody the difficulty of continuing to do good in the onslaught of evil. Nobody understands that better than Him. And He says, don't grow weary. You may not be able to see it, but this is accomplishing something. I promise. If not for them, for you. You're getting stronger. Your witness is more powerful. Your testimony is more effective now. Because you're allowing me to strengthen you beyond what your flesh can do. And that is way more gratifying than defeating an earthly enemy. Every time. Verse 30. I went by the field of the lazy man, and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding. And there it was, all overgrown with thorns, its surface covered with nettles. Its stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered it well. I looked on it and received instruction. See, there's a couple of lessons here. One is about the overgrown field. The other is about paying attention. When I saw it, I considered it well. I understood what was going on, and I received instruction from that. It was a life lesson for me. That mistake that person was making. I wasn't consumed with thoughts of, they're idiots, they're fools, what is wrong with it? I was considered with, wow. That's how far things can get off track if you don't pay attention, if you don't handle your business. I hate that they made that mistake, but because they did, now I can see that mistake and I can avoid it if I want to. See, that's the word judgment that we're supposed to use. See, the world has taken that word that has more than one meaning, but they've condensed it down. They want it to mean one thing: condemnation. Okay, there is a word that translates judgment that means condemnation. That is God's condemnation. He gets to do that. He is the righteous judge. He gets to do that. Not our job, not what we're supposed to do. A lot of people in the church do that, which is why the culture has latched onto that and said, hypocrites, shut up. That's why they don't want to hear anything from us that they consider derogatory, because they will stamp it judgment, condemnation. But the other meaning, which is invaluable and necessary, and we have to have it, is judgment of looking at something and considering it until you understand it, so that you can rightly judge whether that is this or that is this. And we have to do that. And that's exactly what Solomon is talking about here. We shouldn't be condemning anybody. That's way above our pay grade, not our job. The culture wants to label all of our opposing views to what they love as this kind of judgmental, of condemnation, so they preach against any kind of judgment whatsoever. And what irks me so bad is that the church has kind of been like, oh, I'm sorry. They don't always apologize for the real problems, because there are real problems sometimes with how Christians deal with the rest of the world. Sometimes we're jerks. We really are. We need to apologize for that. But we cannot allow them to paint us into this corner of, well, we just have to keep all of our feelings to ourselves, all of our understanding to ourselves. You say there's 1,000 ways to Jesus? Okay. No. That's not what God has called us to do. We can't let the baby get swept away with the bathwater. There is a kind of judgment we are supposed to have, which is the ability to look at the situation, rightly understand what is going on, so that you can know what can be known from it. And we need that. That's what Solomon's doing here. Here's the exhortation. Learn stuff by paying attention. It's very simple. Good stuff and bad stuff. Were your parents awesome? Great. Learn from that. Mimic everything that they did. Were your parents awful? Great. Learn from that. Don't mimic anything they did. There's wisdom for you to take from that. Have you seen people grow in the Lord and reach heights of spiritual maturity that shocked even them? Great. Mimic what they did. How did they get so close to God? Have you seen people just be content with their relationship with Jesus, and they're just kind of hanging out, and they're not really going anywhere, and they're not growing, and they're not happy particularly. They're not sad, but they're just lukewarm. It's great that you notice that. It's great that you judge that correctly. Now, what are you going to do with it? First off, we're told, try to help. If this is a brother or a sister and you see that something is wrong there and you've judged that rightly, see if they will allow you to help. Have the heart that says, Lord, let me help. But the other thing is, I see their field is all overgrown, and I don't want that. And here are the characteristics that I see in them that seems like it has led to this place of lukewarmness. I'm going to avoid that like the plague. I'm going to consider that well and see what I can learn from it. In his example here, what can we learn from the lazy person that Solomon is talking about here? Don't expect anything good to come from it. Absolutely. Because for this person, verse 34, so shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. See, when you put it all together, here's what Solomon saw. Back to verse 30. I went by the field of the lazy man and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding, and there it was, all overgrown with thorns. Its surface was covered with nettles. Its stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered it well. I looked on it and received instruction. Here's what I learned. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come like a prowler and your need like an armed man. But take in the whole counsel of Solomon on this. When he says a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, the idea in our English translation doesn't help us out on this and explain it very well. The idea is a little more. A little more sleep, a little more rest, a little more folding of the hands to rest after you've already gotten what you needed. He's not saying don't rest. You can misread this and end up overworking. And just, I think it was last chapter, he told us don't overwork. That's the extremes in either direction are unhealthy and unproductive and uncalled for. In this example, a little more after you've already gotten what you needed of rest. Isn't that what the temptation that our flesh or the enemy tries to use to get us off track is almost all the time? More. More of something. Just a little more. Just a little more. A little more of a good thing. A little more of something that you need. A little more of something that is good and what you need and that God provides and that He tells you. God set aside a whole day for rest. Rest is awesome. Just a little more rest. How can that be bad? Just a little more food. How can that be bad? Just a little more sleep. How can that be bad? Work is good. A little more work. How can that be bad? Sex is good. A little more sex. How can that be bad? Anything that God has created and intended to be a blessing and part of the puzzle picture, if you throw away a bunch of the other pieces and just add more of that piece, it's going to be hard to make the picture look right. It's not the way that He intended it. Either extreme is self-inflicted theft, robbing yourself of what God actually intends for you in exchange for something you think will make you happier. And there's the problem. Exchanging what God says for what you think will make you happier. Now, if we take Solomon's example a little more literally, okay, he sees the fields and they're overgrown and the nettles, it hasn't been cleaned up and everything's in disrepair. Here's the question. Is there a field you're not taking care of? Well, no, I live in town. That's not what I'm talking about. Marriage, job, relationship with your kids, relationship with your church family, relationship with your blood family, relationship with Jesus. Opportunities to grow spiritually, opportunities to be a blessing to others. Fields. Those are all fields. Fields that need tending and watering and fertilizing and care, or else they'll fall into disrepair. And they'll be all junked up. Not only will the crop not grow in that circumstance, something else will grow, which is the real problem. Leaving a field unattended never just keeps the crop from growing. It allows an entirely different crop. Do I have a garden people in here? Any freaks that get out there and... Sorry, my grandfather had a garden the size of this church because he needed to stay busy when he retired, and I hated every second of it. I had to get up at 6 in the morning all summer long and go over there and work in the garden. And I was telling Eddie the other day, man, I wish I could get that time back now, because now I know how precious that was, but I hated it, man. I hate everything about picking strawberries and weeding tomatoes and but you people know what I'm talking about. If you want great tomatoes, what do you have to do? What's the first thing you have to do? Plant the tomatoes. Then you have to water them. You have to fertilize them. You have to weed them. You have to protect them. You have to watch out for their needs. You have to protect them from the bugs and the sun and too much water or not enough water or all of this stuff. You got to stay on it, which is hard to do if you all that time you're getting a little more sleep and a little more folding of the hands to rest. If you want weeds to grow there instead, what do you have to do? Nothing. Weeds grow through concrete without any help whatsoever. We've got a bush out here we've been trying to kill for 3 years straight. Look at it. Man, it's flowering. It's beautiful. What have you done to that bush? I think we need to perform an exorcism. It will not die. Weeds will grow through concrete without any help whatsoever. Tomatoes sometimes die with all the care in the world. So the bottom line is, you can't assure success by doing everything right, but you can assure defeat by not doing anything. A little more rest, a little more sleep, a little more folding of the hands to rest. And it means a little more. Get your rest. Rest is a good thing. But laziness allows evil to grow. Evil and everything that is against God and what He has for you grows without any help whatsoever. Amen. Father, I thank You for Your word. I thank You for our time together. I thank You for the wisdom that You gave to Solomon that has been passed on to us. I pray that we take it now and pass it on to everybody that we know. Lord, these are great lessons. You are moving in us. You are teaching us. You are drawing us closer to You. You're showing us how to do it. And I cannot thank You enough for that. We praise You, Jesus, for what You've done here in this place today. You've allowed us to sing our little songs to You. You've allowed us to spend time loving on one another. And now we've had an opportunity to dig into Your word and let You speak to us. And I feel like You've spoken. So by the power of Your Spirit, may we take what we've learned today, that knowledge that You've given us, and may we ask for and receive the wisdom to use it in the proper way, that we would be a little more like You when we leave this place, and that we would never be willing to give that ground back. We ask it in Your precious Son's name. Amen. All guys, love y'all.